Let's see if I can get my PowerPoint shared here too. But first, before I share my screen, I just want to welcome everybody to the first writing workshop of the semester and of the 2025-26 academic year. The Humanities Department puts on 3 of these each semester, so a total of 6. Many of the humanities and social science faculty like to try to entice, I won't say bribe, but entice our students to attend with extra credit. If you're just here as a community member or as a curious student wanting to learn more, that is great. Welcome. And let's see. So let me see if I can share my screen as well. Okay, can everybody see it? I know it's in create mode at the moment, but.
Yes, you're good.
Okay, thank you. I always get paranoid. And Zoom, and my students always hear me say this, Zoom and Microsoft Office products don't always get along, and sometimes it freezes when I'm trying to change slides when I'm in full screen. So if it does freeze, I'll just go back to create mode. So prepare for some fiddling. So, and I guess I will hit record here. Record to the cloud. Okay, and we should be recording. So welcome again, everyone, to the first writing workshop of fall semester. So I am Dr. Lindsay Stevens. I teach literature and composition classes here at OLC, and today we'll be talking about finding credible sources in an age of mis and disinformation. So let me see if I can get full screen going on here. Aha, okay. Hopefully it changes slides and doesn't freeze up on me.
Looks good.
Okay, wait till I try to change slides. All righty. So, and this workshop was new last spring. And this is a topic I care passionately about. It's meant to supplement, really, in a way, the talks that Marilyn Frank and Sharon Janice and all the good folks at the OLC library at Woksop ATP put on about their library resources and finding scholarly sources. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about scholarly sources today, but we'll be focusing primarily on popular sources and what is out there in the wild and woolly world of Google. So I'm going to come at this a little bit maybe sideways at first, but just to kind of give us some background as to why it might be important to vet our popular sources out there in the the world of the of mis and disinformation. But I want to just first offer a quick definition of critical thinking, which is a term we hear kind of bandied about pretty frequently, and people not being able to think critically is often kind of pointed to as a reason for why things are the way they are in the world. But I want to try to offer just a quick and dirty definition, at least what I always tell my composition students, is that critical thinking means to question everything. So don't just take information or arguments at face value. And I have a little graphic here. I know it's kind of busy and hard to read. If you're interested, there's this really great website called the Global Digital Citizen Foundation. And they have this really nice graphic. I'm not going to read all the questions here, but you can see kind of the nature of the questions that we might ask in order to think critically. So they call this the ultimate cheat sheet for critical thinking. And you can see like who, what, where, when, why, and how, and just the nature of the questions. Like who benefits from this? Who is this harmful to? what is another perspective, what is most or least important, where would we see this in the real world, let's see, when would this cause a problem, when is the best time to take action, and so on. So anyway, long story short, critical thinking means that we ask those hard driving questions and that we're not just taking information or arguments at face value. Okay, and I also want to offer yet another definition, or rather a key distinction here between a couple of terms, misinformation versus disinformation. And one of my favorite composition and rhetoric theorists is named Andrea Lunsford. She's the author of several books, including my favorite composition textbook, Everyone's an Author, and then another one called Everything's an Argument. And I love Andrea Lunsford. She does such good work. But in that textbook, for example, which we don't use at OLC, maybe someday I keep arguing for it, but it's kind of pricey, and I don't know. Anyway, that's another talk. But she offers up the term misinformation as kind of a catch-all for not only erroneous or false information, but also intentionally misleading erroneous false information and propaganda. I tend to deviate. This is like the one time I will disagree with Dr. Andrea Lunsford. I much prefer a distinction I heard in a talk I attended on Zoom during the pandemic from Black Hills State. My former professor there and their resident grammarian, Dr. Andrei Reznikov, offered up this definition, which I much prefer. He said, and I'm going to poach that here, and we'll just roll with this for the rest of this talk. He offered up the definitions of misinformation being erroneous or misleading false information, right? If you've ever shared something on Facebook and then didn't know that it was sketchy, but it was a mistake, right? It was not intentional necessarily. That would fall under the umbrella of misinformation, whereas disinformation is intentionally misleading erroneous or false information, or even outright propaganda. So just a key distinction there. You'll hear both terms kind of thrown around, but I really like the term disinformation because I think it really, I don't know, just the that hard prefix there of dis really underscores the intentionally misleading aspects of that sort of news or information. Okay, so I am a child of the 1990s, by the way. I'm a little bit older, and this is Fox Mulder. If you're an X-Files fan, that's the poster that was on his FBI office wall. He was kind of a UFO chaser, another other supernatural phenomena enthusiast. But anyway, I thought that was appropriate for this slide, and I want to also discuss why we should care about avoiding mis and disinformation for a couple of reasons. And one is just in our everyday lives in a civic context, right? So a well-informed and critically thinking citizenry is better able to navigate and respond to the never-ending fire hose of fake news, propaganda, outright lies, conspiracy theories, media biases, and hyper-capitalist temptations aimed at everyone in today's digital world, right? So it'll just help us in our everyday lives. Things are increasingly digitized. It seems like we almost just think about something and there's an ad for it on our phones suddenly, and we need to be able to sift through that. Also, as college students, in an academic context, as students, writers, speakers, scholars, and thinkers, Our work is only as good as the sources we use to back up our own bold claims. So in academic writing, bibliography, your sources, right? Everything that's on your references page, that is everything. So you want to pick the most credible, solid sources that you possibly can. So avoiding mis and disinformation will help you be a better college student, and then also in your just everyday life as you well, I hope not everyone doom scrolls, but as you're scrolling around trying to figure out what's happening in the world. Okay, I want to also talk about rhetorical appeals to readers and listeners in the context of mis and disinformation. As a composition instructor, as an English teacher, I tend to frame almost everything through rhetorical appeals. This is the stuff that keeps me up at night. Many students learn these in high school, right? Ethos, pathos, logos. You've probably heard of those before. Others don't get them till college. I was one who didn't get them till college. And we think about those in a composition class when we're writing a paper and we're thinking about audience and how we might get their attention and keep it in our work. And then if we're arguing, how we might convince them, right? But I've also been just kind of idly trying to theorize our current state of mis and disinformation through these rhetorical appeals. And it makes a lot of sense, in fact. So hear me out. So first, we have pathos. This is the one that students always seem to remember. And pathos, as you might recall, appeals to the audience's emotion. So the kind of nuclear example of pathos is, it's not the Humane Society ad, but it's, I forget what it stands for. I don't know, it's got the commercial has it's black and white, has the Sarah McLachlan song In the Arms of an Angel playing, and they're showing all these dogs and cats in a shelter, and it's very sad. And the commercial goes on about 5 minutes longer than it should. And at the end, you're just like, make it stop, please take my money. That is a very popular example of pathos, right? And that appeals to the audience's emotions. In the context of our current times and mis and disinformation, I think pathos can also help us think about what's available to us as just viewers and readers, right? Pathos is very powerful. It's also very in vogue in this socio-political moment. Cable news relies heavily on inciting rage and fear in their viewers. And pathos, I think, can overpower logos and ethos, for that matter, quite a bit. Logos, as you might recall, are appeals to the audience's logic and reasoning. So when we don't have hard evidence, we can turn to deductive or inductive reasoning and walk our readers through our logic. So deductive reasoning, that's kind of getting into the realm of a composition class a little bit, but deductive reasoning has major and minor premises. It's called technically a syllogism. So kind of a famous one is when, as a major premise, when it rains, the streets are wet. And then the minor premise would be it is raining. So therefore, we might reasonably conclude that it is raining, therefore the streets are wet. Inductive reasoning kind of works in a different way and gathers or reaches a conclusion from patterns, right? So if it, on the other hand, if it rains every Tuesday or snows every Tuesday, as was the case in my Composition 2 class last spring, we might reasonably conclude that it is Tuesday, therefore it's going to snow or rain. So, but anyway, we can, when we don't have hard evidence, we can walk our readers through our logic. So that said, pathos can overpower logos. Reasoning takes time, right? It takes a lot of time to work through those syllogisms, work through the logic, and refute all of that mis and disinformation. So pathos can easily overwhelm logos. So do slow down, take your time, sort through the logic. And then, of course, there's ethos, which is the credibility of the speaker or writer. So an ethos can be broken down into a couple of categories. Situated ethos, right, where the credibility of the speaker or writer is already established due to their public image, previous work, or reputation, but they have to continue to maintain it, right? So if we have, for example, last spring, the poet Layli Long Soldier gave a talk at OLC, and she had already this stellar reputation, right? People were like, oh my goodness, Layli Long Soldier is coming. I want to go to this talk. So her reputation preceded her. She had to work to maintain it. Of course she did, and then some. But yeah, she just gave this fabulous reading. But she carried with her this gravitas, this situated ethos. We mere mortals, on the other hand, have to invent our ethos. So in this case, the writer or speaker has to work to establish their authority so their audience will trust them. So in academic writing, we can boost our ethos by eliminating typos, sentence errors, proofreading carefully, citing our sources in perfect APA, formatting our papers correctly, and then also by selecting the most credible sources to support our own bold claims. So this shows our audience that we're trustworthy. And if we're writing an argument paper or a persuasive essay, as both Comp 1 and 2 students will be doing at the end of the semester, then we do have a snowball's chance of convincing our readers of whatever it is we're arguing. I've got a chat message here, everybody. Let me just look. Oh, all right. I see your message, Shannon. Hello, welcome. Uh-oh. It's going to do that thing where it freezes. Here we go.
Hello.
All right. Well, let's move on now. And again, I don't want to step on the library's toes at all. So again, this talk is intended to supplement what Marilyn and Sharon and all the librarians do. I'm going to talk about scholarly sources just a little bit. But again, our focus today is on those popular sources. But we'll just kind of draw a distinction here. So popular sources versus scholarly sources. Popular sources use more approachable language, right? They're meant for a general audience. They will sometimes have hyperlinks. I'm sure you've seen this. I was just reading an article last night that had hyperlinks. They will, it's not impossible, but they will rarely have references or works cited or bibliography page. References is APA, works cited as MLA, bibliography, Chicago, whatever citation style a certain scholar might use. But anyway, you're probably not going to see those things in a popular source. So it's not impossible, but it's really rare. And then popular sources tend to have ads, sometimes too many, it seems like, in our hyper-capitalist age. Popular sources will also have pictures, right? National Geographic is kind of the go-to popular source for a lot of students. And a National Geographic photographer, that's a great gig to have, right? That's kind of the dream job, I think, for a lot of photographers, is being a Nat Geo photographer. But National Geographic as a publication has been around for a long, long time. They're very reliable. They're very credible. I think they might have a paywall these days, which is not that great, but they've been around for quite a long time, and they're considered to be a very reliable source, as we'll see on my next slide. And popular sources are also edited and hopefully fact-checked, not peer-reviewed. The peer review process is something that scholarly sources go through in order to be published. So basically, what happens is that a scholar, an academic, will write a paper and send it in to the publication of their choice in their field. And then it's read by experts in that field and either rejected, which is what happens most of the time, or accepted for publication with revisions, or very rarely accepted with no revisions. But either way, a popular source does not go through that peer review process. But those scholarly sources, those articles that we access through the library databases does. Popular sources are also not vetted for us, so it is up to us as the reader to determine whether a source is credible. And it has to be, as I'll talk about in a little bit, kind of a judgment call. But it is out in the wild and woolly world of Google up to us to decide whether a source is worth our time, either for reading or for possibly appearing in our own papers, right? So scholarly sources, again, not to step on the library's toes, but I'll talk about this just a little bit, just to make this distinction. Scholarly sources do use technical jargon and or fairly dense prose. So they are intended for experts in a certain field. And a scholarly source will have a references page if it's in APA or Works Cited, and MLA bibliography if it's in Chicago, and so on. And Chicago style that I've mentioned is the citation style of choice for historians and I think philosophers in a lot of the humanities, linguistics, literature. We tend to use MLA, which stands for the Modern Language Association. Across the board, though, at OLC, we do use APA for most of our classes, I think with the exception maybe of Lakota Law 333, which does use MLA. But either way, a scholarly source is going to have that references page. And a scholarly source will also usually be, if it's an essay, at least, or an article from the library databases, and that those are vetted for us through the peer review process. So again, that means that other experts in that field have read and verified that info or data or content. So, and a scholarly source will have no ads or few pictures, possibly some charts or graphs. That depends on the field or discipline. I'm going to stop sharing right there just for a second. I have a couple of visual aids. So when the librarians, whether it's Marilyn or Sharon Janice, show us the library databases, they usually show us, right, EBSCO, Academic Search Complete, or ProQuest, one of those. And those are all digitized now, but hard copy academic journals are still a thing. I've got a couple of my own scholarly articles out there in the world. This is the journal. I know it's backwards in my in the little Zoom box here, but this is Western American Literature. So I am by trade a literary critic, and so I specialized I specialize in literature, the North American West, and so this is my favorite journal, Western American Literature, and it's very, I don't know if you can see, but look at, there's like, I guess there's one picture. It's historical, it's like from the 1900s, but, or the 1800s. But look at this. There's no pictures hardly. There's one little ad at the end. This is from the University of Nebraska Press at Lincoln, so UNL. It's kind of the Western American Lit, ground zero. That's their big academic press. At the end, there's some ads for other journals that press puts out. Here's another, Studies in American Indian Literatures. So yeah, same thing. This one has poetry in it, which is nice, but yeah, very few ads, or no ads, excuse me, rather, very few pictures. But um, neither one of these journals uses the columns. I've got a slide I'll show you that does use the columns. You'll see on the, which, and by columns, I mean like the actual two columns on the page, which when you're reading a PDF can be kind of tedious, but here, I'll go back to my PowerPoint. But I just wanted to show you that academic journals like are an actual physical thing. They're very thin, but they do contain some kind of dense prose. So, not to toot my own horn, sorry. But I just thought it was too good of a visual aid to pass up. Okay, back to my PowerPoint here. All righty. Uh-oh, is it going to cooperate? Oh, this PowerPoint. See, I shouldn't have done that. Hang on one second. Like I said, if it freezes up, I might have to stay in create mode here. All right, let me reshare here. Do. All right. Hopefully it works. Well, we'll try it. And if not, there we go. Okay, can everybody see again? Sorry for the interruption, but that was too good of an opportunity to pass up.
Yes,
Okay.
you're good.
Thank you, Joan. So I had mentioned earlier Andrea Lunsford's textbook, her composition textbook, Everyone's an Author. And she does have a very lovely chapter about distinguishing facts from misinformation, which I appreciate. And then she also has later in that textbook a couple of chapters about research, and she takes great pains to distinguish popular from scholarly sources. And I had mentioned National Geographic, and this is a scan, by the way, of that page. I know it's a little pixelated, you can't quite see, but anyway, there's National Geographic. So again, that is just kind of the go-to example of a credible popular source. So there's kind of a typical Nat Geo cover. We've got Genghis Khan glaring out at us. And then over a little bit to the right, there's just a kind of classic Nat Geo, excellent photograph there. And then there's a sample of a page there. You can see there's another smaller photo. There's some wraparound text, a meaningful quotation, a meaningful blurb kind of sticking out. I know it was hard to see from the scholarly journals I just waved at you, but here's another example. This is the American Journal of Human Genetics that Lunsford uses as an example of a scholarly source. And the cover is not really that flashy. I'm a literature person and not a geneticist, so I won't judge, but you can see it's not nearly maybe as visually appealing as the Nat Geo cover. And then we have as text the title, The Genetic Legacy of the Mongols. And that, I know it's hard to see, it's a little bit pixelated and teeny tiny there, but there are lots and lots of authors for that one. And then in the very tiny print that I know you can't see, but it has all of the institutions that those authors are affiliated with, like Oxford and Princeton and all these fancy schools. And then there's the two columns that I was talking about. So often you'll see that in those scholarly sources. So I just really like this graphic or this page. I think it's a nice compare and contrast kind of example of popular versus scholarly source, just visually. And I've talked about content-wise too, and their aims, how they're different as well. Okay. Well, on to vetting popular sources. So again, I'll leave it to the librarians to show us around the library databases. Hopefully you'll get those tutorials in your composition class. And if not, they are always happy to help us learn about scholarly sources. But in terms of vetting those popular sources, there are certain things we can do if we're just Googling something and are not sure whether a source is worth our time. So we can do what's called triangulating our sources, right? So if something sounds outlandish, it probably is. So a good tactic is to make sure 3 or more sources are saying the same thing. And also we can read critically and defensively. So I opened this PowerPoint with that slide that had all the questions just for kind of more general critical thinking. And the questions I've got here have to do with reading defensively in particular. So again, when we read and think critically, we want to ask those hard questions, not take anything at face value. So here are some reading critically and defensively questions you might ask. So who wrote it? Is there an author? And going back to scholarly sources, just for a second, there not being an author is generally going to be a popular source thing. Scholars are very, very proud of their work. As you saw, I just waved 2 scholarly journals at you and told you I had a couple of publications out there in the world. And generally, when an academic publishes something, it's unpaid, right? We're doing this for the project of knowledge and furthering research in our own field. So if a scholar publishes something, they're going to let you know. They're proud of it. So very few scholarly sources are published anonymously. Popular sources, on the other hand, often are. So whether or not there's an author, it's not a red flag necessarily. Like if something's published by the Associated Press, or I know in Composition 2 for that first paper, we had the Joe Biden apology to Native Americans article, and that's a reliable source. That's a good source. It doesn't have an author though. We have to like cite it by the title and APA, but it's certainly something to think about. If there is an author, what are their credentials? And where does this source appear? What is the reputation of that publication? And then for you composition students out there, I know many of you have taken that class, even if you're not taking it currently, but you always want to be thinking about audience as writers, right? For any writing occasion, whether you're just typing a text message to a friend or writing an email to a faculty member, but you always want to be thinking about audience. And in this case, it's good to think about what that writer's up to. What are they trying to get you to do? Do they want you to donate money? Are they trying to change your mind, take action of some sort? Try to figure out what they want. And then also keep the web address in mind. So .gov stands for government, right? .edu is education. We've all got those emails by dint of our being affiliated with OLC, right? And then the OLC website itself is olc.edu, right? That stands for education. .com is commercial, right? So might be some capitalist aims in there. A .com is probably trying to get you to buy something, perhaps. A .org is usually a nonprofit organization, so fairly straightforward. I have had in my composition classes some students right out of high school come in and say, my high school teacher told me not to use a .org as a source. I want to push back against that a little bit. I just want to say that not all .orgs are created equal. Like the Black Hills Clean Water Alliance, for example, and then over East River, the Friends of the Big Sioux River. Both of those are .orgs, and they have very good information on their websites. They've got like hydrologists doing their research for them, and they've got all sorts of helpful charts and graphs and so on. So not all .orgs are created equal. So I'm not going to say don't ever use a .org as a source, but just kind of do ask those questions like, what do they want? What are they trying to get me to do? And then there's also international web address endings to keep in mind. So you've seen some of these, I'm sure. .ca is Canada, .fr is France, .au is Australia, .nz is New Zealand, and so on. .uk is United Kingdom, .ru is Russia. So do with that what you will, but do keep in mind that if it's got an international web address ending like that, it might be a little bit suspect. I've got a couple chat messages here, folks. Let me just check in. Oh, hi, Marion. Welcome. Nope, you're fine. Let's see. Okay. Every time I check the chat, I goof up my PowerPoint. Sorry, folks. 1 second here. There we go. Little bit more here on vetting popular sources. So I know this slide has too many words on it. It's probably hard to look at, but I had a lot to say, so I'm breaking my own rules here. But you can also check any links to see who sponsors the site, whether they're trustworthy sources, and be careful of over-the-top headlines, which do serve as clickbait to draw you in. So if you see words like amazing or epic or incredible or unbelievable, those are very serious red flags. Do you want something in your composition paper or your essay for whatever class you're writing a paper for with something like that in the title? So again, your paper is only going to be as good as the sources that you pick. So stay away from clickbaity, amazing, epic, and incredible, unbelievable headlines. I laugh because there's a ton of them out there. And then also pay attention to design. So be wary if it looks amateurish, but don't assume that a professional looking design means that the source is accurate or trustworthy. And then also be sure to recognize satire. Some writers do make a living by writing satirical fake news articles, right? The United States has a long history of this that began with Jonathan Swift. The New Yorker and The Onion are renowned for their satire, but there's a lot of others out there, lots of satire. And you can also check facts and claims using nonpartisan sites that confirm truths and identify lies, such as factcheck.org, Snopes, All Sides. Those are all really helpful websites. So once in a while, if there's some big, I don't know, situation or conspiracy theory seeming thing going on, I rarely go to Snopes, but once in a while I will. I'm like, this cannot be real. And I'll go to Snopes and I'll see that it's debunked. And then you can also look up any research that's cited. It may have been taken out of context or misquoted. So just, again, something to keep in mind. And these are all just tactics that are meant to be helpful. Because again, it is a judgment call when we're vetting these popular sources. Another thing you can do, I know we're not supposed to read the comments in a news article. It is annoying, but you can look at the comment section. If multiple parties in that comment section say the article might be false, so a little bit of a red flag there, proceed with caution. That said, there are lots of internet trolls out there who love to stir the pot. So the comment section might too be a little bit compromised, but it's worth at least kind of skimming down, scanning down, and seeing what's being said. And then also be aware of media bias, which may strive to advance political agendas. So, and I've got here, we can when I gave this talk last spring, we actually had time at the end to get onto the website. I don't know if we'll have time today, maybe. But this is a chart called the media bias chart. There are lots of media bias charts out there on the web. This is the original one you can see in the upper left-hand corner. This is from Ad Fontes Media. And they actually publish their methodology on their webpage. So I forget how many people they have working for them, but it's not just like some guy in his mom's basement cranking out a media bias chart. It's a very bipartisan, fairly large coalition of people from all sorts of disciplines, lawyers, academia, journalists, and elsewhere that are rating these sources. So their methodology is published. And there's even a spot on their website where they say, is the media bias chart biased? And they say, yes, it is. Everything's biased. But if we look at this, and again, I'm a literature person. I'm not a mathematician by any stretch of the imagination, but I do remember X and Y axes. And on the X axis here going across, we have this is rated politically, most extreme left to hyper-partisan left, strong left, skews left, middle, skews right, strong right, hyper-partisan right, and then most extreme right. So that's the X-axis. So you can guess if you're looking for reliable, credible sources, someplace in the middle is somewhere you want to look. Going down on the y-axis, we have thorough fact reporting or fact-dense analysis, a mix of fact reporting and analysis, or simple fact reporting. So and they gave us, at least on this little still kind of screen grab of this, kind of this sweet spot with the green dashed line there. So in the middle and then higher on the chart is a good place to be. And again, I'm a child of the 1990s, and when I was growing up, the internet was not what it is now. And Rolling Stone was kind of my go-to Bible, if you will, back then. And I don't see it on here, but yeah, Rolling Stone in the current version of the media bias chart, and they update this a few times a year, is not on, did not fare very well on the media bias charts. I was like, oh, I was just reading trash the whole time. But back to the y-axis, moving down, you can see analysis or wide variation in reliability. So, right, red flag, opinion or wide variation in reliability. Moving down to selective, incomplete, unfair persuasion or other issues, and down into contains misleading info, not good, and then contains inaccurate or fabricated info. So again, I don't know if we'll have time for this today. We might just want to spend our time talking with our little bit of time at the end here, but the media bias chart by Ad Fontes Media is worth your time, at least to see. And I know not every source you might use for a paper is going to be on here, but just in terms of being, a responsible citizen and seeing like how your favorite publications rate according to this thing, it's certainly an interesting read. Okay, I believe this is my last slide, and then we can talk about some stuff. But I want to just offer another little reading strategy. So I gave you quite a few questions you can ask, like who wrote it, what are their credentials, and then also the strategy of triangulating your sources and making sure that 3 or more sources are saying the same thing. But going back to what I was saying about the media bias chart and how they themselves admit that their own chart is biased, like we are biased readers ourselves. So it's good to think about that as well. And one sort of bias that we as readers are vulnerable to is called confirmation bias. And that's the tendency to accept, agree with, or search for information from sources that confirm what you already believe or think. Okay, and here's a little cartoon to illustrate that here at the bottom. This guy's surfing the web, and he says, "I've heard the rhetoric from both sides. Time to do my own research on the real truth." And then the central panel, you can see he has found literally the first link that agrees with what you already believe, and he's just very excited about this. He's like, jackpot. So, and then down the rabbit hole he goes, right? And then there's also something called an attribution bias, and that is the tendency to attribute motives or reasons for the behavior or ideas of others to a personality trait rather than to a particular situation. For example, that author is just driven by greed. And for you composition students, if you've, I know it's kind of early in the semester for this, but if you've taken those classes before, you may have heard of the logical fallacies. There's a logical fallacy called a hasty generalization. And the attribution bias, I think, is a very close relative to the hasty generalization, just kind of writing somebody off with making that big sweeping statement. Okay, so that was, yeah, almost my last slide, but yeah, so I just want to, yeah, we're about out of time here. So we'll have to, again, I just want to encourage everyone to play around on the media bias chart website on your own. I can put a link to it in the chat if you're interested. But I want to just open the floor now to any questions or comments. And I guess I will preface that by saying one thing that I don't take up in this talk that I would like to, and I kind of touched on this with talking about the comment section, but just like all the bot farms out there, and then also like AI, like I know I need to bring AI into this talk a little bit more, and that's probably connected to the bot farms and so on. But I'm just kind of curious what everyone thinks of all this. If you have any horror stories you'd like to share, if you have any questions or comments. Anybody? Hi, Nikki. Didn't see you there.
Yeah, I don't get the AI thing. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't mess with that. But I feel like they kind of have some good resources too. They bring up too, but I try to research those too
Yeah.
to see if they are, credible and stuff. So when it comes to AI, that kind of like I don't know if it's cheating or not, because they just have it's really easy with the
Right.
AI.
Yeah. And for the and OLC is still, I think, working on like an AI like blanket policy for the whole school. And one of the big discussions in academia is how to use AI responsibly. In the humanities department, humanities and social science, for the first time, is coming up with our own AI statement for our syllabi. And for the first time this fall, I included an AI statement in my syllabi, or in my syllabi, and I think quite a few of my colleagues did as well. And in terms of like composition or speech or something like that, like we've all kind of decided that it's okay to help like with brainstorming or even creating an outline, but you can't just be like, hey, chat GPT, write me a persuasive essay. But in terms of finding sources though too, like it's yeah, certainly a bit tricky. And I think just keep doing what you're doing and ask those questions and try to read defensively and think critically about it. But yeah, it's kind of weird new terrain that we're in. Does anyone have anything to add to that? AI just kind of slowly, it seems like it's here to stay. Uh, and, um, and yeah, I've grudgingly accepted it. So I'm now trying to figure out how to use it responsibly. At the same time, like, I consider myself to be at least something of an environmentalist, and I don't care for all of the energy that it uses and so on. And so I kind of use it sparingly, I think. And I resent deeply now that anything we Google like brings up that AI response, but it sounds like that's just how it's going to be now, going
Yeah,
forward.
I tried for a long time to not, it just pops up anyway,
Hmm.
And then I tried, to keep it off of there, but it just automatically it's on there now
Yeah,
on my computer, So every time I look up stuff, that pops up first.
yeah. There's a way to
Sources and
disable it,
stuff.
and I've
Yeah.
tried to figure out how to do it, and it's like impossible to do. There's like, 20 clicks and
Yeah, so I look up, what they have, but then they have other sources, better sources underneath it. So I try to go with those first.
yeah. Yeah, that's a good tactic. Yeah, does anyone have any other questions or comments or want to talk about AI some more? I'm going to put two in the. Oh, and Joan put, yeah, from clickbait to credibility has great charts. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for that, Joan. That's a really good resource as well. All right. Well, while you're all thinking of questions, again, we're about out of time here, but yeah, if anyone thinks of anything, I do have that feedback form for everyone to fill out. I put it in the chat right at the beginning here, but again, hopefully this works. Nikki, who is here, and I revised it last spring, so there's a couple more questions than there used to be. But here's a link to the feedback form. Hopefully it works. It said earlier this morning that it was not accepting responses, but then I fiddled with the settings and now it should work. So hopefully, fingers crossed, but all right. And yeah, if you could all fill out that feedback form, that would be wonderful. Again, I hope it works. Okay. Well, if no one has any questions or comments, again, hopefully this workshop was helpful. It's certainly something to to wrestle with, not only for our papers but also in our daily lives. And again, this is just a topic I feel really passionately about, and I'm always and hopefully in future versions of this talk I'll figure out a way to address like bot farms in the comment sections and AI in general. So yeah, awesome. Yeah, and oh, I see some comments from students. So yeah, thank you all for coming. Really appreciate it. Okay, well, I guess we can call it a day then, folks, and I get to get in the car and run off to Eagle Nest. But please fill out the feedback form. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today, and keep an eye out for writing workshop 2, which I think will be coming up in October, and will have to do with APA format. So put on by my colleague and friend Virginia Town. So thanks, everyone.